Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11. We're going to continue this here. We are building up. We are building up an officer base. Okay, medium armor designs have advanced. Okay. That is good. Of course. Now, those are for much later. We'll see about them then. High density alloys, that would be good. Alright. Aero engine research, good. Allows us to do helicopters, but that's also another very far in the future thing. Just don't know that I'm going to use those enough. I am getting done with a lot of the 37 or 38 technologies. We have a bunch here still to do. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, Chile. Metal. Okay, yes, that'll deal with our metal issues. No, thank you. No, thank you. Now, that's another thing we can do to help out is build a few rares extraction buildings. Now let's look here. That's pretty good for steel, so coal mine, steel refinery. Okay, we're down also coal, of course. Be a good place for more coal. So with that, well, let's do a steel refinery here first. We should definitely do those before we start really like needing it, you know, coming down low on it. That'd be alright, we could increase that a bit too now. Because we want these before too long. Let's move it up top. Okay, anti-tank and anti-air upgrade advanced. Now let's do these two. Talking to Django the other day about some of these. Well, don't know if I'm going to use them at all. I used them somewhat in the Italian campaign. I sort of kind of think of these as additives, as opposed to an all-in-one. I don't think these are good enough, worthy enough for an all-in-one, but say, instead of maybe with some divisions, not like every division, but some divisions, like for, I don't know, a standard infantry division, put just a standard mixed support instead of the anti-aircraft unit, or something that's useful but may not be greatly useful. Single engine aircraft armament. Useful, kind of, if you sort of understand me on that. Okay, how long until we get the single engine aircraft research? Because that will, well, that's in 39. So yeah, let's just come down here. And we will draw that. No, okay, the headquarter unit. No, not him. Not for bombers, and particularly medium bombers. Okay, we'll go with Kesselring in his air command element. There we go, Leader Corps B. We'll still have him as a general and such too, but light armor designs. Make it grayed out, yes. And since we just light armor, we'll prove that. And Bank of International Settlements. And we're going to go big. That will help us the most. And we have more research because of that. Let's go with reconnaissance there. Road networks advanced, very good. Medium artillery upgrade. It's this one. Okay, so for that one. Well, let's come over here and do medium artillery, I think, here instead of the regular. We can also do, yeah, tank destroyer. We'll also get assault gun eventually, I think so. Yeah. And railway level 3. Did I stop the wrong one, or was it also railway? No, I did stop the right one. I was saying road, I think, but it's railway. Alright, well, I'm only a little confused. Railway networks. Efficiency up by 0.2%, and supply throughput up by 0.2%. That is both good. Austria, we're going to take you shortly, so I'm not going to go with anything from you. Now let's look for steel from the New World. A lot of them are C's. Okay, Chile, will you sell us? Yeah, that's good. So there we go. And 2, 3, 2. Oh, was that fighters? I get confused, sorry. Yep, 232 is the first, yeah, for some reason, I don't know, because that's what threw me. The first squadron or whatever. We've already got 2 and 3 SSHQs. Okay, good. And that big thing there, other than the HQ, of course, is the delay between attacks is reduced. And we're going to continue doing that, because that'll continue the delay, and it'll give us more SSHQs to help repress things. Mention that we can see our current revolt risk just sort of out there on the margins a little bit. Where are our SSHQs? Let's shift that one there. Japan, give them money for a teeny bit of rare material, sure thing. How long until we get those? Okay, June, May. Coal is not that far off. One thing, let's test this. I just don't know, quite honestly. Okay, let's see if we were to add that. Is that its own thing in the province? Yes, good. Looking for places to do a big improvement. We'll get these built. Taken away from some other stuff, but that's okay. Any tank upgrade. Those are all grayed out. And those are all being researched, so let's shift over to here for artillery unit combined arms. And light armor upgrade has advanced. That will also gray out too. We are here, yeah, okay, so yeah, direct fire unit. We can take some hits for a while from the coal. The steel we're lower on. Money, hopefully we'll get a bunch of people now who want to buy stuff from us, but we'll see about that. Or we'll sell to the US some more. Monroe effect. The hollow charge. 155. Okay, goes with that one. And the first of the month is coming up. Just like that. Okay. Single engine airframe research, which will be grayed out. But I think we're going to wait on that one just a little bit. Yeah, large caliber machine gun. Well, machine gun focus, we'll do that one first. And heavy armored designs, that'll be grayed out. Twin engine bomb bay advance. Now we'll do large caliber. Medium artillery upgrade, I think that. Well, we can continue that, and we will. And tank destroyer will allow us to come over here. Just look, okay, back here, and we can do 10 position twin engine airplanes. Maybe that's why we'll do the... Yeah, we'll do some of that, because see, this does help the flying boat. You know how much I like to use those, so... And heavy transport protection, so yeah, that's a good thing. Oh, we still have a little more space, and we're still moving up there, that's good. We'll wait till 39 to do that. I want to get some of these guys here eventually. Okay, damage control systems. Okay, seaport capabilities. And yes, we will. Let's do this first. Nothing as sweet as dying for the motherland or fatherland. See how psychologically, of course I was reading that, but I interpreted it differently. Yep. Sorry. Meeting with Hitler, Edmund Schutzmas demands an assurance that the German Empire would respect the integrity and neutrality of Switzerland at any time. Okay, well, gain a bunch of threat. Now I'm still planning on invading here. Plans are subject to change, but that's currently my plan. But we're looking at later at doing that. Because there's a TRE event that I think we want to take advantage of. Non-aggression pack, which I believe lasts for about a year, so that should be fine. We'll lose some dissent, which we want to do. We will gain a little bit of popularity. That gains some... That, okay. We will go with that. And yes, we did. I think as soon as we get this under 2, I think we can get Austria. And of course, may mean I should just simply ramp this up, but we are pushing pretty hard with that. As it is. Okay, news and politics. Well, popularity is now high. So we're now more leadership, more national unity. Great. Up from small, so territorial pride, national unity, a little bit more, but nice. Ruling party support, much more. Airport capabilities, advance. We might do some of those again, but probably not the second two until a long time, and I just got a lot of extra ICs or research slots or everything. Okay, negotiations. Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, Milan Hodza, that's this guy, has begun negotiations with the Sudeten Partei on the national question, which is Konrad Henlein, head of the Nazis in Switzerland, or in Czechoslovakia. Air bases for southern Germany, yes, we want those. All to the top. Those will pop up almost immediately. Help our practicals a little bit. But sometimes I think things like that happen, and they sort of help the practicals in the sense that they don't get any worse than they currently are. Okay, airport and seaport. That will cost us, I know, but we're doing it. And let's see if we can sell more supplies to somebody. I'd like to start selling to the Soviet Union. No. That'll come in time. Well, that should get us at least to the positive. And seaport level, as we can see here. Increased money, increased resources, just marginally true, but it's an increase in air organization. Better, and coastal submarine classes have advanced. Now, okay, everything that... Well, we might as well do that. Already got this a little bit organized here. Call it the Reserve Army Corps. In that part of the west, part of the west wall. This is the West Wall Army for now. We may rename it later on. Okay. Sort of been waiting for this, and I know I've talked about this in previous series, but both people who have watched the previous series want me to continue talking about history, as well as I do know that there will be new people who have not watched the other series. So we'll talk a little bit about this. This is the KdF Wagon. In 1933, Adolf Hitler gave orders, it probably should be, or gave the order to Ferdinand Porsche to develop a Volkswagen, a people's car. Hitler required that a basic vehicle capable of transporting 2 adults and 3 children at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour. The people's car would be available to citizens of the Third Reich through a savings scheme, savings booklet, at 990 Reichsmarks, about the price of a small motorcycle, an average income being around 32 Reichsmarks a week. Okay, yes. This is a very important element with the Third Reich. Hitler both liked, and I've been watching different documentaries, and some of them are better than others, but one of them was talking about Hitler wanted some super trains. God awful big things that needed like 2 sets of tracks and would almost be like 4 times as wide and 2-story high, big sort of moving houses, and he envisioned them as to like traveling to, you know, Eastern territories and stuff. God awful stupid mega structures that just don't work. I know I've talked earlier about how trains and the right systems with small compact cities sort of work for Europe, don't work in places in the USA. So, you know, they have their place, but these sort of super mega trains are just dumb. Now, Hitler also envisioned, he wanted, because Hitler was also maybe not as technically interested, at least I don't get that, as he was in cars, but, you know, he was sort of an early proponent of flight. And he wanted the German people to fly a lot. Now, his vision was sort of Volkswagen airplanes, if you will, and sort of, you know, or Volks airplanes or something like that. Small family airplanes, as opposed to large transports that transport a lot of people. So when Hitler wants large super mega things that are stupid and doesn't do other super large mega things that would make sense, you know, whatever. But so it's part of the idea that cars had been for a long time are for the elites. And as you know, let's say small motorcycle, that's, you know, I mean, not every boy, you know, in the Weimar Republic, even when things were sort of good, a lot of people didn't have money to afford things like motorcycles. But it's not something that's out of the reach of possibility. And so what he's demanding here is, and now, people or companies, you know, are made up of people, understand their market and understand who's going to buy things. Who's going to buy a car? Well, it's rich people, so they make rich people cars. Well, Hitler understood that we need a cheap car that people will be able to afford to buy. So don't make an expensive person's car, make a cheap car, and this is what it should cost. And I don't know what the, you know, 990 Reichsmarks, what it really cost to build a KdF wagon at the time, but that was sort of the ordered price to be, meaning it may be subsidized. You know, you're paying that for it, but it may cost 1,200 Reichsmarks to build. That wouldn't have deterred Hitler and the Nazis in any way at all. They would say, great, fine, build it. We'll subsidize it from tax money or, you know, whatever. So this is part of the scheme. Now, most people aren't going to have money to buy this. And the German economy is, at least compared to some places, compared to the U.S., is still in the throes of the Depression. We're having the Great Depression, guys. It's great, you know. Oh, man, you can watch, like, the movie Bonnie and Clyde, though that happened in, what, 34? 33? You know. Roosevelt sure knew how to throw a Great Depression and make it last a long, long, long time, because Roosevelt was a socialist. Even if he doesn't want to claim to be such, he was a socialist, and he did socialist government management, and government management doesn't work like this. Now, why is it working sort of, not working perfectly, sort of working in Germany? Well, it's because it's sort of doing some of the Keynesian stuff that Roosevelt couldn't get away with, maybe. You know, you can only, you know, so Germany is building armaments. People don't buy tanks, but if people are making tanks, you know, what are you going to, you know, what are they going to buy? And I know I've talked about this a bit before. And so you can artificially, you know, there's what money today, I think in almost every single case around the planet, is fiat money, meaning it's something, we say that, it's worth $1 because it says $1 on it. It's fiat money, it doesn't mean anything. Where it used to say on the certificate, this will buy $1 in gold, or this will buy $1 of silver. So meaning you could go in and take this into a federal bank and go in and say, you know, let's say $1, because there was like a $20 gold piece, was the smallest gold piece. You could show up with $20 and they'd hand you a $20 gold piece, and you could walk out whenever you wanted to. And so the idea was that for every single dollar that was out on the market, there was either gold or silver sitting in a bank somewhere. That was the idea, and for a while it was true. And so for all the money that they actually printed up, you could go in, and they were gold certificates or silver certificates. Sometimes it was on the gold standard, sometimes it was on the silver standard. And so that's what money was. Mexico had lots and lots of silver. All kinds of countries, people bought their silver, but one of the main users of Mexican silver was China. The Mexican silver dollar was a popular trading currency in China because so much silver was coming out of Mexico, and they were minting money out of it, and people were buying it. So it was really helping Mexico with trade goods and stuff, and it was a commodity that was used. So, but if you're going to use fiat money, you can print up, in America we're having, debates over taxes. Why don't we just have a freaking tax holiday for a couple of years that no one pays income tax? Oh, well, that ain't fair because what? Yeah, we could just, no one pays income tax. The government, well, what's the government going to do? We'll just print the money. Well, that's running into debt. Well, it may not. No, it isn't running into debt. If you actually just print the money, not because right now America has a huge debt problem, and so what they do is well, we have a debt, so they, if you don't realize this, we have a huge debt problem. So the U.S. government doesn't get enough in from taxes. So, but it needs money. So what it does is it offers bonds. Government bonds that say we will pay you back like in 20 years or 40 years and over a certain amount of time. I don't know. Different bonds have had different sort of schemes, and I don't quite know what's going on with all the different bonds. But basically they offer bonds for somebody. So somebody shows up. Recently it's been China. Shows up and goes, we have all these US dollars that we've been getting for when we sell goods to Kmart and Target and other sort of big stores in the U.S. They've been handing us all these dollars, and we don't know what to do with them because they're not buying anything from America for various reasons. Some of it is protectionism, embargoes. So since that's sort of going on, they got all these dollars, they don't know what to do with them. And I mean, it's huge amounts of dollars. Oh, you'll give us bonds that will earn an interest amount coming off of them. Say it's 6%. Oh, so if I hold this bond, it's 6%. Oh, and it's an American bank. And so maybe I can hide it from the Chinese government, millions of dollars from the Chinese government because we can put it in maybe Hong Kong is still safe, or we can put it somewhere else, or however. So if we can just get our money back plus 6%, plus 3%, plus whatever, okay, that's good. And even if inflation is, let's just say they have a 3% loan from the American government, and it's 4% inflation. Well, okay, they're losing 1% on their money, but that's only losing 1% of their money, and their money is stable because so far America has not defaulted on any of its debt payments. So you're going to get your money back. Now, how does America deal with when the 20 years or whatever, or 10 years or whatever they are come up due? They issue more bonds. So you turn in your 10-year bonds, you get another set of 10-year bonds plus, the percentage of interest additional. So it's just this revolving door. So we have this huge debt problem because that is how we're funding the American system, as opposed to simply just going in and printing more money. Now, whether you actually go in a printing press and print more money, or you just electronically add it to bank accounts, not necessarily to like a person's bank account, but to the Department of Defense bank account, and then that bank account just simply goes and buys more fighter planes or spare parts or whatever it is. And if they do that, and they do a lot of it, then people are going, oh, is this dollar really worth anything? Because they may print up $25 trillion tomorrow. You don't know. So if you did it quietly, like it is a secret project, you could probably get away with some of it. But you just keep it very dark secret. But that's how fiat money works. So the Nazis can print up domestically as much money as they want. People don't want to buy things from Germany right now. Some of it is the U.S. In reality, the U.S. has a big depression. They wouldn't be buying all the supplies which were taking as consumer goods. They don't have the money to buy it. In reality, we can't. There isn't this cash cow of America to sell supplies to. In reality, it just does not exist. And you point to me, and I'd love for you to point to me. You know, oh, this was selling in America, or that was selling in America. I'm sure there was some exports to America, but on a large scale, no, they're not really buying much from Germany. You know, maybe a few technical things and stuff, and you know, so nobody wants, no one wants to buy things from Germany. France is having, you know, say, you know, their radio factory or whatever, or their toaster factory or whatever, are turning out, say, 100 toasters a day. Okay, and they're selling, because they're selling 100 toasters a day. But that factory may be able to, at this time, turn out 200 toasters a day if they ramped it up fully. You know, but there's not enough people wanting to buy toasters in France. So the French people in government and whatever don't want to buy German toasters, even though Germany has lots of toasters to sell. So when Germany shows up and goes, I want some steel, I want some rare materials, I want some oil, I want whatever it is from France, here's my Reichsmarks. I go, we don't want Reichsmarks, but we will sell to you if you have French francs. Well, we don't have any French francs. Oh, sorry. Well, do you have English pounds? Do you have American dollars? Because these were harder currencies that people, especially the pound and the dollar at the time, because again, the gold certificate, I'm not sure if we were on the gold standard or the silver standard at this time. Or, you know, now when I say silver standard, it doesn't mean we're not also backing it up with gold, too, but I'm not quite sure, and it changes around at different times. I think it's under Nixon, is it? Finally, they get rid of the gold standard or the silver standard finally completely under President Nixon. But so for the longest time, it is perceived, whether it's real or not, meaning whether they fudged the books or not, I don't know. But the idea that there's huge mountains of silver and gold sitting somewhere, that so if Germany had dollars, but France doesn't want any American toasters, they could trot over to America with the big bundle of money and go, here's the money, we want some gold, and then take that gold and go back to France. So when it's pounds or dollars, people wanted it, you know, whether it's people or governments or whatever, because, and now it's sort of often safer to have stacks of dollars because they thought it's cheaper and easier to move around than it is gold. You could put it into banks, you know, you have an account, maybe in Switzerland, maybe in France, depending on the laws, but in dollars. So people wanted dollars. People didn't want Reichsmarks. So you have this situation here. And I think, well, the rubber I don't know about, but a lot of, and steel, Germany's still importing some high-end steel from Sweden, but a lot of it's steel it could actually do for itself. Glass is not that big of a deal, I don't think, here. So a lot of this is domestic produce here for Germany. So this was sort of a way that, you know, you're paying workers to build west walls, you're paying workers to build highways that are underutilized. There are trucking on it, on the highways, the autobahns. There are cars. There's not many of them. You know, they're a great idea, but they're sort of a little bit before their time in the idea that they're going to fill up and be used a lot. Just not that many Germans with cars. And other sort of projects that are going on. You're paying a lot of soldiers. They've got money for things, and they want to spend it. They want to buy toasters. Obviously, I'm using toasters as a generic kind of thing. So they need. The government's spending money, and they need to get that money back. Otherwise, you're going to have inflation. Because if you have, let's say, cigarettes, which I don't think Germany makes any tobacco. They've got to import tobacco, you know, make grows. So I've got to import tobacco. And so if tobacco's limited, and I've got 1 pack of cigarettes, and and there's 4 people wanting that 1 pack, you're gonna have a bidding war on it. That's why I'm sort of using that, because post-war cigarettes are sort of used as money, because the script, the idea that whether it's the American or other occupation scripts, or I don't know what Germany used, I'm talking in the first 2 or 3 years after World War II ended, they're may still trying to use the old Reichsmarks, but who really wants, I got food here, you're giving me Reichsmarks from the Nazi thing? The American, this isn't any good money. And Americans have script, and you may have to take it, when Americans are buying stuff locally. But, it's a traded commodity. It becomes a barter economy. So tobacco, you got 1 pack of cigarettes, 4 people wanting to buy it. Unless you put a law that says you will sell a pack of cigarettes for only, a Reichsmark per pack, say, or whatever it is, that, unless you're limiting it that way, you're going to have inflation. But if you pull the money back in to the system, pull it out of the economy back into the banks, if you will, the central bank, then you're going to do okay. Now, there's several ways to pull the money back in. One is taxes. That's when you have fiat economies. That's part of the reason for taxes, is simply to get money back into the government, to sort of give the illusion that the government is spending money that's real money and not just phony money. But it also takes it out of people's hands. Part of the way is bonds. Is the idea, hey, you give us money now, we'll give you more money later. Big thing done during the war, but even municipal bonds and other kinds of things. Well, we here in Long Beach have a bridge that's a paved bridge. We have very few of those here out in California. Many parts of the United States, especially in the East Coast, they have toll roads. But they have a big bridge that took, 20, 30 years to pay off. And so what they did is they floated bonds and go, no, yeah, we're going to build this big bridge. It's really, really nice and really high, and it goes over a thing that you can still move ships, big super cruise liner, sure. Big super oil tanker, sure. Whatever, and move multiples, in and out all at the time. Well, how are we going to pay for this? Well, we'll do bonds that people will be paid back over a long time. And how we're going to do that? Well, we don't trust, because sometimes city governments default on bonds. Well, we're going to tie it specifically to a toll. And so now they still have the toll on the roads, even though they paid it off. They're using it to pay off other things. But so they had a toll on the bridge to use the bridge to go across. Wasn't expensive. It's been years since normally I just take the freeway, which goes up and around, as opposed to being in sort of one part of the harbor kind of thing and near it and wanting to go over to the other. Sort of depends on where you're starting on from. But there's a lot of commercial and other traffic on it, and it can be quite busy. It really does shorten things. The Golden Gate, there is no tolls, never have been, but that would be potentially another kind of thing. So city governments also often do bonds and pay off in taxes over many years, is the way they look at them. So bonds are a way to get money out of the system for now. Again, like they used it during World War II, when no one had any, in America particularly, I know a little better, is people were making money, but there's nothing to spend it on. Buy bonds, which pays for the war, which after the war, since we're still going to have a country, you'll get your money back. And at that time, we're going to have all kinds of things for sale, because the war's over. So you'll be able to spend the money. So that's a way to get to that. Well, I know I'm taking a long time on all this, but trying to explain it. So this, right, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, because there's some more events, I'm sure. I know, because I'm programmed on it. Part of the idea here is that, also another way to do it is get the money out of the economy. I'm sort of getting here. Is saving. Is putting it in the bank. Just literally putting it in the bank. With the idea of preferably some you know, pay some interest on the money, and the bank normally, let's say, loans the money out for 6% interest. You know, payments on the loan. They pay you, say, 3% on your money in there, and that other 3% is somewhere between. And I know all this, and I've been reading some of this stuff that Nazi propaganda hating on the bankers. Now they're always Jew bankers, Jew bankers, Jew bankers, but it's just bankers is what they're complaining about because they're sort of anti-capitalist. That theoretical, and I don't know, and it varies, that like 3%, well, that's somewhere between operating costs, you know, running and managing and filling out all the workers in a bank and security and all that kind of stuff, operating costs, as well as profit. And often I knew a banker years ago. Man, he had a head for numbers. I'd show him a gun. I mean, he'd sort of glance at it, look at it. Yeah, I'll take that one, because he's buying new stuff when I was working in the firearms industry, and put it back there. And after a while, I figured out, you know, and he just sort of glanced at it, and I could, when he come back in, he'd rattle off the serial number of the firearm, because he had a mind for numbers. And so he worked in the banks. I think it was mainly currency trading or something. And see, he was talking about sometimes it's a fraction of a percent, you know, like 0.5% or something, you know, profit over cost, and that's great, you know. So a lot of the banks really operate at a really small percentage margin. Now maybe it's billions of dollars of Reichsmarks, but what they make on a percent, and it's still maybe hundreds of millions or whatever that their profit may be, but for all the money that they move around, they're just making a teeny little percent. Really, what all the anti-banker stuff is, from anybody, whether it's Nazis or somebody else, is just the politics of envy. Is that somebody has big, huge numbers and they have nice things. Just a politics of envy. Because trust me, banks make some of the smallest margins on their money. Period. So one of the ways just is to get the money out of the economy is to have people to want to save. Well, that's part of the idea for these KdF wagons is you, and we're going to talk a bit more about these because I've got some other elements I want to talk about the KdF wagon. Notice I keep calling it the KdF wagon. And that's part of it is that it's the Kraft Deutsch Feud, sorry. You know, the Strength Through Joy group coming out of the DAF, the Deutsches Arbeiterspartei. Deutsches Arbeiters Partei, that's DAP. DAF, Deutsches Arbeiters. I forget what the F stands for, the DAF. It's the German labor union, basically, the Nazi labor union. This is the sort of what we're going to give you. This is a lot of propaganda right now. They made prototypes at around this time, but they don't really get them. I think they make 600 of them total before going into the war. So they really don't get these things going, but we're going to start doing this here. Well, but they convert this factory. This becomes the Kubelwagen and the Schwimmelwagen basically as well too. Is this so? Eat up a lot of our metal. Why we have it, and energy, and it also. I hope I'm not overly duplicating it. Really turns Brunswick, because they have that SS one that gives you a lot of ICs. Now the SS, we're pursuing certain industrial policies and owning certain industrial capabilities as well. So I don't know what that, but this is why I put it here, because we have the KdF wagon showing up. The factory there is being built. And it gets done, I think sometime in, or well, done, I don't know. They continue working on it. I think it continues, gets expanded during the war, but they get into production just about at the war start, and they turn it over to the Kubelwagen. So, okay, and we get Captain of Industry because it also gives us automotive industry. I look at that along with the, should Germany have an automotive industry? Yes, you've been seeing some of the evidence that I've been showing you for the yearly automobile expositions in Berlin. You have the Ford Motor Works, what is it? Opel, I think, is a GM subsidiary in Germany. You've got a bunch of various automotive, truck, and other sorts of things, so that you get Captain of Industry with, what does it say here? Several things. Maybe it's up here. Okay, here, Captain of Industry. Just talks about the provinces, which ones are what. Ball bearings, or something like that, and automotive industry. I think maybe the two, the Schweinfurt or something, I don't know. But we get the Captain of Industry now. So money is increased considerably, 35%, and efficiency in production is increased by 5%, which is also considerable. The medium bomber prototypes has advanced, that is good, which will be grayed out, but we can come up and start researching this. And light bomber prototypes, and we're going to come up and research this from that. And United Kingdom have launched the Ark Royal. So you can understand, economies are tricky things. I am not an economist, and I am a failed at least twice over, depending on how you want to look at a small business person. So, I'm not the best person to explain it in detail, but I think I'm getting you the overall concepts. Socialism at its core has several fundamental fundamental wrongness is incorrect, fundamental flaws. One, socialism and Karl Marx understood economies to be a piece of be a pie, and the pie is this big, and he really looks at it and sees it. And if you look at socialism, and they talk about fairness, and that's part of the idea, is how big is everyone's piece of the pie? And if somebody has too big of a piece of pie, you're denying it to somebody else. That's the Marxist viewpoint of economies. And I really think Marx, maybe if I were to actually read some biographies on him, maybe I have a different view of his personality. But I really do think he was trying to be, if you will, scientific or historical or whatever, and really trying to understand it, as opposed to trying to have a doctrine and then trying to put it onto people. I really think he studied history. He just fundamentally misunderstood economies. Economies are not zero-sum games. Land ownership is a zero-sum game. If France is this big, it's denying this land to somebody else. Okay, I mean, shouldn't Luxembourg have a little bit more? Now you can talk about population size and fairness and quality of it, and then you go, what? No, fuck it. This is ours. We have armies. We don't care if it's fair. We don't care if you have millions of people living in the desert. This is ours. We're not giving it up. Okay, but land is a zero-sum game. The Dutch sort of try to break the rule and trying to take land away from the sea. We can talk about taking land away from the sea, but still, it's functionally really a zero-sum game. They aren't making any more of it in any real thing, and where you get some erosion here, you get some growth in some other places. It's basically a zero-sum game. But economies aren't. And food growth, because we talked about this before. In the Middle Ages, land ownership was mostly only good if it produced food. And the rare mine or whatever. But, so whether you grew crops on it or you raised sheep or cattle or something on it, in areas that you can't grow crops easily, that's what good land was for. So food in the Middle Ages there was very little growth in food growing technology. So you weren't going, you needed, if you wanted more food, you needed more land. Well, now we don't have a food problem in the world. No one needs starve anywhere in the world right now. I do truly believe the U.S. could feed the world, just the U.S. And I believe California, and I may be wrong in California, but I believe California could probably feed the U.S. Now, the problem with the U.S. feeding the world, and what happens is that, like in Haiti, where you're growing a certain amount of food crops, they have a disaster, and then America floods in food and bankrupts all the local farmers. So the local farmers are out of a job, and they're dependent on American food. And that's part of the problem with it. But the U.S. could feed the world. The only reason there was, back when I was younger, starvation in Somalia or Ethiopia and other places where they did, we are the world and tried to feed it, was the primary reason was the lack of infrastructure to get the food there. Lack of roads and railroads, and proper roads, not dirt roads. Secondary problem was politics. One, the politics of the countries, partially under colonialism, but exacerbated, made worse under independence, often by just pure corruption as opposed to necessarily government policies, but government policies did affect it as well. But they didn't do enough infrastructure growth. But also the politics in some of it was wars and civil wars and other things. So there were famines because of bad weather. Their crops failed. Many people died, maybe even, I don't know if millions is the right term, but thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, large numbers of people died because they didn't have the food. And they were trying to fly food in to feed the people. And yeah, that's great. I want to, let's try to rescue the people. But the food is cheap. The food is almost, nothing. It's the jet fuel, the maintenance on the aircraft, the ships that are getting, And so you'd show up with ships into Mogadishu port, and they're just like one dock. You'd have 10 ships out there waiting to be unloaded, and there's one dock, and they're unloading it by sack at a time, at a sack, a bunch of guys picking up sacks and carrying it off on their back or whatever, or only one crane, or ridiculous things like that. They just didn't have the infrastructure, so people starved. No one needs starve anywhere in the world, whether that's India or Bangladesh. Now, of course, you can have an immediate situation where you have a cyclone, I guess they're called here in the Indian Ocean, and destroy some infrastructure, and people for a while may starve because they may not be able to get enough new food there in time. But the price of food can be managed for the world. So Marxism and economies are dynamic things. That pie, and a good example would be like some of the richest men in the world. I think the richest is Jeff Bezos, at least publicly known. Now he's selling goods, and that does take, when he sells goods, it takes away from somebody else selling the goods. That's true. So he's competing. But Microsoft, that's a good thing, is before, let's say, 1970 or 1975 or whatever, Microsoft, which all they really do is make the operating system that I'm using now, is he comes up with an operating system and develops it. He doesn't take that away from anybody in the world. He didn't go out and rob a bank. He didn't go shoo some people off their land. He didn't take away from anybody else in the world. He created an operating system. Now, way back in the early 80s, with the Apple IIs, that's the Apple operating system in computers. And you have now Intel and some of the other stuff, and IBM. They've been doing mechanical computers, and so they going on. But they're creating a whole new industry of software. So whether Paradox, who makes this game, doesn't make something, earns money, puts money in people's mouths that work for them, or food in people's mouths that work for them, but they don't take it away from anybody else. Now I may have a limited budget on what games I'm going to buy, so they may be competing with another software company for how much is going to be spent on software. but they didn't do it by taking it away. So however big Paradox's piece of the pie is, doesn't diminish anybody else's piece of the pie, is that they grow their own pie. And so Microsoft is or Apple or whatever, some of it's hardware, yes, some of it, but the sort of the operating system, that whole operating system is grown. Or Google, just look at Google. They grew it themselves. That piece of pie started out as an infinitesimal nothing, and now it's a megacorp, one of the most, I think, the most powerful, because they control ideas, megacorp in the world. Now, Google, you can argue, and maybe rightfully so, that they're taking away ad revenue from TV channels, or from the newspaper, or from radio, because one of their ways that they support Google makes money is from selling ad space. Another way is selling information about you. They are a spy. They are an industrial spy that spies on you. People that are viewing this, because you're viewing this on YouTube, and they own YouTube, so they learn your habits. They learn what ads you watch or whatever, and they tell other people. They tell people about you, whether you as John Smith somewhere or you as a group of people. They're selling that information out, and since they're competing with other people selling information, but nobody in 1930 was collecting information like this. There were censuses, there were surveys that did sell in some information, but nothing on this scale of information technology. So Google has created this piece of pie. So they've created this economy. So I don't begrudge Bill Gates or I forget the Thiel or whoever, the owners of Google. I don't begrudge any of their money that they make. I may begrudge their censorship and other things I may bitch and moan about, or their demonetization on YouTube, or something else I may go on about, but I don't begrudge any of their personal wealth, because they clearly have grown. They took an infinitesimal piece of pie and grew the economy, and because they have employees, those employees go and shop in a supermarket or go to a coffee shop, and or buy a computer or whatever else. So they're putting money in the economic system, so they grow the economics, and so part of what spreads socialism is various people's lack of understanding of economies. And do you really think that if the guys who own Microsoft didn't buy that Lamborghini for $200,000, they'd just be cheaper and you'd own a Lamborghini? No. You know, they're not. You're not going to buy it. And so they're not taking away stuff from you by them. So that fairness argument is wrong. And the other fairness argument is out there is the politics of envy, greed, and envy. Greed is wanting more. Envy is not jealousy, but is that they have something and you don't, and you think that because you don't have it, they don't deserve to have it. Not just you want it too. That's sort of envy too, but that's not what I'm talking about. Is because you can't have whatever it is, they shouldn't have it too. And it's the politics, and that's how the left uses this stuff. And so they talk about wealth gaps. They talk about fairness in economies and how CEOs make 200,000 million billion gazillion times more than their workers. Who cares? I don't. I'm all for income inequality. I love income inequality. Now, saying that doesn't mean that I want people to be starving out there who can't afford rent, who can't afford food. And okay, so if you're out there arguing that people shouldn't be starving in the streets like they are in California, I don't know if they're starving, but they're living in the streets. Bad government policies, because we're the richest. We used to be the richest state in the union, but we have lots and lots of income tax now. So everybody who makes income is moving to Texas, who has no state income tax, and their economies are roaring. So Texas is roaring economically because they don't have state income tax, personal income tax. State income, they have a business, I believe, but not a personal. And California has all kinds of incomes and other state taxes, so they're driving anybody out with money. Driving them out with money. If I had money, I would immediately get a house outside of California and spend just slightly more than half of the year outside of California to claim residency somewhere else, and then maybe spend the other, 48% of the year in California, just because it's still a wonderful place to be, even though they're trying to kill it. So, but since I don't have any money, taxes on rich people don't affect me directly. Indirectly, that they're driving out jobs and other things, but directly they don't affect me right now. But so I love income inequality, and that is a great, wonderful thing. That, again, doesn't mean that we should then, there should be starving people in the street. That's a different matter. The lack of a minimum support for people, which could be because automation. We're going to put all the taxi drivers and all the Uber drivers out of business because we're going to automate the cars, Well, and other things. Well, what do we do about that? And these are some very serious questions. And they're not really affecting us yet, but they will be probably within my lifetime, maybe within yours. That we're going to have very serious challenges to market capitalism because we may have a overflow of labor, and with more and more mechanization as well as AI mechanization, that we won't need humans. But so Marx was really trying to understand it, but he misunderstood the nature of economies, and then people went with it. Now, the other element, which gets into sort of this politics of greed with socialism, or politics of envy, is that they want to get their money by taking it away from rich people. They want to redistribute wealth. So somebody, and they often, and again, they sort of see in different parts of the world, and often in Europe, they see old money, people that have inherited it. So why do they deserve it? Why do they deserve it? Because it's theirs. They own it. Period. End of story. That's why they deserve it. They own it. It's theirs. And I talked earlier about, in the last series in Italy, about the reforming, and the idea that peasants within a feudal system have rights to the land, because that's part of the feudal system. They have, that doesn't mean everybody, but those who owned farming land did have certain rights to their land. So you do have this sort of land reform situation that, yeah, he was Lord so-and-so, but his peasants who had rights to the land, they have rights to the land. So some of the land, when you're changing it from a feudal economy, if you're no longer going to grow stuff and do things in a feudal economy, and you're converting over to a capitalistic ownership economy, some of the land owners' land should be owned by the people. I do see that. But some major elements of it should still be owned by the landowner. And it needs to be worked out under the different rules of feudalism in the different regions as you transition over the way it should be. But still, if that rich aristocrat has other wealth, it's theirs. Oh, but they made it for generations on the backs of other people. So those people also got protection, got leadership, got management and market works and development, because often it was the landowner who was improving the local infrastructure and other things. It was a reciprocal thing here. Sorry, going too long. It was a reciprocal proposition. So both sides got it. So other wealth, it's theirs. Now, if you understand the idea that everyone should be paying a flat tax. So if you're wealthy, and whether that's a sales tax, an income tax, a property tax, so if you own 1 square foot or 1,000,000 square miles, you should pay the same amount per square foot or whatever. So obviously if you own 1 square foot, it's, you know, half a penny or whatever a year to the government. You own 1,000,000 square feet or square miles or whatever, it should be a lot more. But it should be the same percentage, you know, if you base it on value of the land or however you do it. Just because someone owns 10 times, 100 times more than somebody else, their land tax should be the same percentage for the value of the land, or however you're measuring it, because yes, some land's more valuable than other land. Land owned in the middle of a city can be more valuable than on a halfway up the side of a mountain. Yeah, it might be a nice ski resort halfway up the side of the mountain, but still it's more valuable per square foot in the city. But so if you own you own a single shop building square footprint, or you own half this city, however it is, you should be paying the same amount per square foot or whatever, or valued, you know, out edge of the city worth less than in the center of the city. But however it should be, whoever it is, you should be paying the same taxes. So with that understanding, so that just because you're rich, you shouldn't be paying a higher percent. Socialists don't understand that. That doesn't mean social welfare programs are bad or wrong or shouldn't be done. I am not a pure capitalist, a pure libertarian. I am not that. If socialists and sort of socialism, and as Margaret Thatcher, socialism doesn't work because eventually you run out of other people's money, because you set up a government program based upon taking money away from somebody else and giving it to other people, as well as giving it to government employees. That's a big element to it. A lot of government programs have huge overhead government costs. You would just do better if you just you gave everybody a check every month than have government programs. Have capitalist hospitals, but just give people checks every month. Now, of course, they're going to go spend it out on a new computer or alcohol or a new car or hookers or whatever it might be. And then when they need the health care, oh, well, I didn't think I was going to need the health care, so I spent it. So you could set up some sort of voucher systems or something, you know, but as opposed to government-run healthcare, just have privately run healthcare with vouchers or whatever. But if you do want the big government program, fine. But you have to base it on one of two principles. Either everybody's paying their own fair share, which is a flat fair share. So if you're rich and you make a lot more money, you're going to pay the same percent as if you're poor. Now, then you have a minimum. If you're below a certain amount, well, you're not paying enough to pay income tax or whatever. And if you're running off sales tax, well, if you're not making enough money and you can sort of kind of show that, we'll actually give you money because that covers your sales tax. But your own fair share, base it off of that, and then you can't go beyond that because then it's no longer fair. Or because it's fiat money, you simply print the money up. You don't take it from a rich person. You just simply print the money up. And we've talked about this and how this can be a problem with Keynesian economics and how we're looking at this. So the idea of social welfare programs need to be, and I think you're going to go into chaos eventually if you do too much Keynesian economics. You know, when you build the Golden Gate Bridge, or you build the bridge from here to there that ships can go under, but you can, you know, run trains and you can run cars across it, and effectively, great. And that's going to help the economy on both sides of here and other things. But after a while, you don't need any more bridges across here. You built enough. And you just, you know, so you have to sort of plan your economies out, plan your social welfare programs out, so that you don't crash them, so that you don't base them off of taking from the rich just to give to the poor. And since they can afford it, we're going to take even more percentages and more percentages, because eventually you run out of other people's money. That's the problem with socialism. I know I have socialist viewers, and that's what I'm trying to... Now, notice what I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to convince you not to be a socialist. I'm trying to explain to you the way economies work, and then you go then, well, what's the greatest priority? Now, as some of the nations that were, I think it was, remember 3 years ago, something, I was reading an article, how the Netherlands were trying to sell their Panzerhaubitsen 2000s, really great, or a bunch of those, not all of them, really great German-made self-propelled 155 millimeter howitzers, armored, at least at the time, the best in the world, because they didn't need any more. Because, you know, there was no longer going to be the Soviet Union coming over, and they were trying to sell them off. I don't know if they ever did, because, you know, they wanted good money for them, and they're expensive. But now everyone's complaining and worrying about Putin, and, you know, are we going to go to war over these states? And so, yeah, Denmark, you may need a defense budget. Some of it may be spent as part of a NATO or UN occupation of Afghanistan, or Iran, you know, after we have to deal with getting rid of their nukes, or whether it's that, or whether it's part of Denmark's contribution to defending, you know, Poland and the Baltic states. And I know Sweden is up-arming now again, because they're seeing the threat from Russia, because they're only Finland, and the sea is the only thing that's in their way, really. And so they're looking at long term, we want a Sweden. And the more likely chance that we're going to have a Sweden is if there's a Finland, so that they're getting ready to protect Finland, I think, you know, to show the world, to go show Putin or whoever comes after Putin is, if you're attacking Finland, we're moving in. And maybe even if you're attacking here, even though they're not in NATO, but they're highly cooperating with the U.S. I know now. Their socialist government is highly cooperating with the U.S. very quietly on military defense regional matters here, which means cooperating also with NATO. So, okay, you need an army to protect yourself. Okay, then after that, you can start making judgments. How, you know, and like I've talked about, the idea of maybe a minimum, well, I don't know if I really said it, but a minimum income for people because of transitioning over to, from, you know, automated systems, losing jobs. Now, of course, self-driving cars will still need mechanics. We'll still need, you know, some maintenance people. Yeah, maybe you can have an automated system that loads in gas to their system, but maybe you still need somebody because of putting in air in the tires, but are changing the tires. So you'll still need some jobs. You'll still need some humans, but the percent of humans will go down. You know, when you automate cars, you know, driving around taxis. So you'll still need some people with some jobs. You'll still need some of that going on. But so there's going to be great changes. So I'm not trying to convince you not to be a socialist in the sense of social welfare programs. And if that's all you're trying to be as a socialist, is you want a good social safety net, okay. I may think it should be 10% of what you think it should be, or maybe I think it should be 1/3 of what you should be. Because again, I'm not a purist. But you need to understand that, you know, socialism, you'll eventually run out of other people's money. And if you do things that stifle job growth, you do things that stifle economic growth, whatever the policy is that stifles economic growth, keeps that pie from growing bigger. So that means that pieces, you know, whatever person's size of the pie, individual size of the pie is, if that pie gets bigger, doesn't mean that it takes away from them, and it gives them a potential of growing their piece of the pie bigger. And so socialists need to understand those policies and an economic situation. And so most don't, for various reasons. So, you know, because I know a few of you have been posting, you're not going to change anybody's you know, political position. Well, I don't know if I will, but that isn't what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give better understanding of economies, and they can reject my understanding. That's fine, and I still hope you stay. You may my understanding may wear off on you a bit. You may not totally agree or totally disagree, but a bit. But you may still want to follow your policies. That's fine, but you do so from an informed position. That's what I hope. Well, I know this has gone on more than long enough, but hopefully it was interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. That does help. And of course, if you haven't already and you made it this far, you better have subscribed. I mean, if you made it all after all this, you better subscribe. And of course, please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, why you think I'm, all wrong. I'll listen to you. And then I'll respond, and we can just leave it there. Your ideas, my ideas, and people can read them. And any corrections, I do appreciate that. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.